Danica Lorer, and this is Lit Happens, your celebration of literary arts here in Saskatchewan. Today I'm very pleased to welcome Elaine M. Now Elaine has been drawing comics since she was 5 years old and self-publishing since she was 17. She received a Xeric Award and a grant for Look Straight Ahead, which deals with mental illness. And her newer comic is Dust Ship Glory, or do we call it a graphic novel? What do we?
I don't mind calling them comics, to be honest. They're still comics.
So thank you so much for being on the show today, Elaine.
Thanks for having me.
So start off now. 5 years old to begin drawing comics. You've been drawing. You've had a pencil in your hand. Why did that appeal to you in such a strong way?
I just felt that comics were a really good medium for telling a story. That I felt they could do things that other media really couldn't, in a really interesting way.
And so you were drawing early. Were you also writing dialogue and scenes with words as well as pictures?
Oh yeah, although I've always considered myself more of an artist than a writer, I guess.
And so tell me a little bit about the first book. So Look Straight Ahead. Tell me a little bit about Look Straight Ahead.
So Look Straight Ahead is about a high school senior named Jeremy Knowles who suffers a mental breakdown. And the story is about his journey through that and the struggles that he faces and his eventual recovery. And I'm told it's a very powerful story, and I got some very good critical acclaim for it. It was nominated for a Saskatchewan Book Award in 2014, and it was featured on the Space Channel's Inner Space last year.
Wow, that's got to feel good when you see your work get that kind of reach out to the public, to the reading public. Now, you've marked a page. Can you show us a little, because graphic novels are a little bit different than some of the things we talk about on the show when we're just talking about words. There's a richness in the artwork as well. So can you tell me a little bit about a page and just hold it up for us as you're talking about it?
Yeah, so this is a page that I often like to show because I feel that it sums up the feeling of what it's like to have a mental illness and any invisible illness really, that people can't always see that there's something outwardly wrong. So this is when Jeremy is attempting to go back to school after he's been in the hospital for a couple of days, and he says, well, this isn't real sickness. I can still stand upright and I'm not vomiting blood. And if I stayed home from school, I would be faking sick. So
you've used the words and the pictures to really demonstrate something that so many people feel.
Yeah, and then I used snow on a lot of the pages to sort of heighten the mood, I guess.
So what are your favorite things to draw? Do you like drawing people? Do you like drawing scenes? What are some of the things you really like to draw?
Well, I kind of like drawing monsters, I guess, and there's a little bit of that in this book. So there are these three demons, essentially, that follow Jeremy around and berate him. Largely this guy here, who I called Prinzhorn. His name is never mentioned in the book, but it's Prinzhorn.
So you go into the imagination. Now, this book, it goes really into the mind and the imagination, both with the monsters and the mental illness. Now, Dust Ship Glory has a bit of a different story. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
So Dust Ship Glory is adapted from a novel of the same name by Andreas Schrader, who's a writer from BC, and it's based on the true story of Tom Sukinen, who was an eccentric Finnish immigrant farmer who lived in Saskatchewan during the 1930s and attempted to build a huge steamship in the middle of his farm.
And you can still see that ship, can't you?
Yes, you can. There's a reconstruction of it by Moose Jaw.
And so what appealed to you about that story? Why was that a story that you thought could lend itself well to a graphic novel?
I thought that it was a really strange story, and he was a really strange character, and he was really mistrusted by those in the community. But he was really brilliant, and he was always inventing things, such as like a sled with a motor before such a thing existed, or a machine that puffed wheat that before such a thing existed. These are things he supposedly invented, and I thought a character like that was really interesting. Someone who's really brilliant, but just sort of maybe a little bit mentally ill, and doesn't really know how to fit in to his community, to society.
So it's really a character-driven story as well.
Yeah, and I'm a huge fan of character-driven stories.
And so what are you working on now? What are some of your new projects?
So right now I'm just finishing up a new comic book called Arcade, which is, the elevator pitch I'm using is Wreck-It Ralph with Vikings. So it's about a fictional video game character called Axeman, who's a Viking warrior with an axe for a hand, who faces the destruction of his cartridge world, because it's retro video games. He faces the destruction of his cartridge world and must get the attention of a retro game collector in our world.
So you're pulling into all those things that are really strong in pop culture and people really love. People love the retro video games.
Yeah.
So, and so is that character, is that a new character that you've come up with, or is that a character that exists?
Yeah, so the story is written by my partner, Mark Allardwill.
And so we'll have to look forward to having you on the show with that as well. Now, you also do other art commissions and such. What kind of work do you do in that field?
I've done quite a few different things. I've done posters and logos, and sometimes I do pet portraits for people.
And what's your favorite thing about working on these graphic novels, these comic books?
I guess just sometimes they're, I don't know.
Well, what are some of the things that people have said about Dust Ship Glory? Are people taken with it? Are they interested in this story? Do they want to go and see where this fellow walked?
Oh yeah, I think a lot of people are quite interested in going to see the museum when it's finished.
And have you spent time there as well?
Yeah, I have been there a couple of times.
Yeah,
It's pretty cool.
And I think it's just, we're lucky when we tell stories that are about Saskatchewan, that we can walk in those places. And I suppose as a visual artist, just to see the land, and that would give you a strong sense of place when you're, it's a character-driven story, but I think setting would probably have a...
Yeah, and I do try to give my stories a very strong sense of place. And there's lots of locations in and around Saskatoon, and look straight ahead.
Oh, so that, and I think that's something that appeals to a lot of people, is when they find their city in a novel or a comic book or a graphic novel or even in a short story. It grounds us and makes us want to read more about it. Mm-hmm. So where can people find your books?
They can find them at McNally Robinson and 8th Street Books and Comics, Amazing Stories, and Collector's Edge, and also at Saskmade Marketplace.
And do you have a website that you have so people can see more of your work?
Well, my own website is a little bit out of date, but I have it's blog.e2w-illustration.com, and then I have a Tumblr as well, lookstraightahead.tumblr.com, and then people can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Cuckoo's Nest Press.
Nice. And so is Cuckoo's Nest Press, is that your own press? Or?
Yeah, that's my self-publishing imprint.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today, Elaine. That's about all the time we have for today. So this has been Elaine Will. I'm Danica Lorer. You've been watching Lit Happens. You can find past episodes by going to Shaw TV Saskatoon. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter or at danicalorer@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.